In the 1970s, Florida faced a monumental waste crisis. Millions of old tires were scattered across the state, clogging up landfills and creating a growing environmental concern. There was no viable solution for disposing of them, and the landfills were quickly becoming full. This put pressure on local communities. The situation was reaching a boiling point, and it was clear that something had to be done. What could go wrong when a bold idea aimed at saving the ocean ends up making it worse? The people of Florida were facing a growing waste crisis. In an attempt to fix the problem, state authorities created one of the worst environmental disasters in history. A project meant to help the ocean ended up damaging it for generations to come. Stay with me, because what you're going to witness is a cautionary tale of good intentions gone horribly wrong. In 1974, a bold idea was born. Instead of leaving these tires to rot in landfills, why not use them to solve another pressing problem: marine conservation? The state's authorities were determined to do something innovative. The thought was simple: why not use these tires to build an artificial reef? It sounded like a win-win situation: address the tire waste problem and create a new habitat for marine life at the same time. But what started as a creative solution would soon turn into an environmental disaster that would haunt the ocean for decades. The decision was made to drop 2 million tires into the Atlantic Ocean, 2 kilometers off the Florida coast. The tires were fastened to the ocean floor using metal clamps and nylon ropes, forming what was to be called the Sea Canyon Reef. It was meant to be a place where fish could thrive, corals could grow, and marine life could flourish. The idea was met with excitement and optimism, and the project moved forward quickly with great fanfare. But no one could have predicted how badly things would go wrong, and how quickly it would spiral out of control. At first, things appeared to be going according to plan. The corals began to grow on the tires, and fish started to swim around the newly formed reef. The project seemed like a remarkable success, a shining example of human ingenuity solving 2 problems at once. But beneath the surface, trouble was already brewing. The ocean was not as easily manipulated as people thought. In the coming months, something went horribly wrong. The salty waters of the Atlantic began to take their toll. The metal clamps that held the tires in place began to corrode. The saltwater slowly ate away at the fastenings, and one by one, the tires started to break free from their anchors. As the tires drifted away, they were carried off by powerful ocean currents and violent storms, wreaking havoc on the surrounding ecosystem. Instead of creating a thriving sanctuary, the tires were now damaging the delicate marine environment. It was like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode. As the tires began to drift, they started to smother the natural corals that had been growing in the area. The weight of the tires and their constant movement blocked sunlight from reaching the corals. This prevented them from photosynthesizing and growing. Over time, the natural coral reefs began to die off, and the vibrant underwater landscape that had once been home to hundreds of species of marine life was now disappearing. The once thriving marine ecosystem was suffocating under the very materials that were supposed to protect it. But the damage didn't stop there. The tires began to release toxic chemicals into the water. Rubber, as it decomposes, leaches harmful substances, and these substances began to poison the surrounding waters. Fish, corals, and other marine life that relied on this ecosystem were now at risk. The very thing that was supposed to help marine life was now destroying it. The water became toxic and marine species began to suffer. The ecosystem, instead of flourishing, was being poisoned by the very materials meant to save it. The worst part was that it was all preventable. By the late 1980s, it was clear that the project had failed. The tires were doing more harm than good, and the damage to the ecosystem was significant. Environmental groups began to speak out, urging the authorities to take action. The damage was already done, but there was still time to prevent it from getting worse. The first step was to remove the tires from the ocean floor, but this would prove to be a far more difficult task than anyone had imagined. The scale of the problem was so massive that many wondered if it could ever truly be fixed. What should have been a simple cleanup became a battle the ocean was winning. Removing the tires from the ocean floor was not as simple as picking them up and hauling them away. The tires were buried deep beneath the ocean's surface, scattered over a wide area. They were heavy, and many were lodged deep into the ocean floor, making them nearly impossible to retrieve. The removal process was slow, and it became apparent that the cost of cleaning up the mess would be far higher than initially anticipated. What was supposed to be a simple cleanup project turned into a monumental and expensive operation. By 2007, only around 73,000 tires had been removed from the ocean. But millions more remained, scattered across the ocean floor, causing further harm to the marine ecosystem. The cost of removal was staggering, and the efforts to clean up the reef were still ongoing. It became clear that the cleanup would take decades, and that was only if the authorities were able to continue their efforts without further setbacks. The financial burden of the cleanup was growing, and it seemed like the problem would never end. The ocean, once a pristine environment, was now a toxic waste dump. Ecologists began to estimate how long it would take for the ecosystem to recover. Some suggested that it would take at least 50 years for the damage to be undone. That's 50 years for the marine life to reclaim its home, 50 years for the corals to grow back, and 50 years for the waters to be cleaned of the toxic chemicals released by the tires. 50 years? A lifetime for some. A lifetime that many species might not have. The damage done to the ecosystem was not just a short-term setback, it was something that would impact generations of marine life to come. The story of the Osborne Reef is a painful reminder of how quickly things can go wrong when we act without considering the long-term consequences. What seemed like a brilliant solution to an environmental problem ended up becoming a nightmare that the ocean and the people trying to fix it are still dealing with today. It shows us that sometimes, even with the best of intentions, we can make things worse. We often rush to find solutions without fully understanding the impact of our actions. The ocean, after all, is a fragile ecosystem, but while the damage done by the tire reef is undeniable, the story doesn't end here. Despite the overwhelming setbacks, there is still hope for the ocean and the creatures that inhabit it. The cleanup efforts continue, albeit at a slower pace than anyone would like. New technologies and methods are being used to remove the remaining tires from the ocean floor. While progress is slow, there's a sense of determination to undo the harm that was caused. Scientists and marine biologists are working together to restore the reef and bring life back to the area. It may take decades, but there's still a chance to heal what was broken. The Osborne Reef also serves as a lesson for the future. It teaches us the importance of thinking long-term when tackling environmental issues. The temptation to take shortcuts, to look for quick fixes, can sometimes lead to disastrous results. The ocean is not a dumping ground, and we need to be more careful with how we interact with it. The consequences of our actions can linger for generations. And once the damage is done, it's not always easy to fix. We must always consider the broader implications of our decisions. This story also serves as a call to action. We need to take care of our oceans and the creatures that live in them. We can no longer afford to treat the ocean as a place where we can simply dump our waste. We need to find sustainable solutions to the waste problems we face. Whether it's tires, plastic, or other forms of pollution, we have to think about the long-term effects on the environment and work towards solutions that don't create even bigger problems. The stakes are too high, and we can't afford to wait. The road to recovery may be long, but it's not impossible. Every tire that's removed from the ocean is a small victory, and every step toward restoration brings us closer to a healthier, more sustainable planet. But the real victory will come when we learn from the past and commit to better, more responsible practices for the future. If we don't take action now, the consequences will only get worse. If you've learned something valuable from this story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with others. Let's spread the word about the importance of environmental responsibility and raise awareness about the damage we're causing to our oceans. It's time we take action before it's too late. Let's work together to protect the planet for future generations. If we don't, who will?